A Michigan high school has a mass murder with 4 students killed, 4 years after the same school made the national news for bullying. Are the right people going to jail? Up next on The 10th Man. Oxford High School allowed an attack which killed 4 students in 2021, an independent investigation shows. The school failed to follow its own procedures, which would have put the shooter into a threat assessment and suicide prevention program. Blame has been assigned. This tells us they failed to stop the attack once it was in progress. Fine. Why not try to prevent an attack in the first place? How about addressing the school's documented bullying problem, which probably caused the attack? 4 other Oxford students were featured on ABC News a few years before describing their experience being bullied. Bullying should be examined as a probable failure. The morning of the attack, just an hour before, school counselors should have asked the parents if their child had access to any guns. That's the procedure. Ironically, the parents thought of this themselves and upon checking, immediately notified police that a gun was missing, doing the school's job for them. By then it was too late, so an ambitious prosecutor put the parents in jail and held them for 2 years without a trial, in a pattern of government employees hiding information, exploiting governmental immunity, scapegoating outsiders, and rewarding each other. Double irony, the gun was in the school's possession all along, back at the classroom in the boy's backpack. A counselor retrieved it saying, "This thing is heavy," and without looking inside, handed it back. A short time later, the attack began. In that same family meeting, school officials had threatened to turn in the parents to Child Protective Services, making that threat in front of the student. That error was probably the trigger that turned illegal weapon possession, a common offense in schools, into a mass murder. For 5 different failures, the school is under criticism, and rightly so. But they're only being criticized for not stopping a crime already in progress. What about prevention and root causes such as bullying? In 2012, an Oxford student lost his life by self-harm. This 8th grader died during an epidemic of such deaths in Michigan's Oakland County. In response to all these student deaths, the neighboring Lake Orion Schools community launched a program of suicide prevention. They created a 30-member team of parents, students, community leaders, and professionals from government and charity organizations and put a program in place. As far as we know, Oxford schools did nothing, and their suicide prevention program today is a voluntary Zoom call for interested persons. The police investigated the death of that Oxford teen for weeks and exonerating the school, saying there was no bullying involved. 1 month later, however, the local newspaper said bullying was a big problem for another 8th grader at the same school. The school had just hired a certified bully buster to deal with the program. She may have requested that news coverage, and she pops up repeatedly in the chain of events we'll cover. Moving ahead to June 2013, a 15-year-old member of the same class of 2016 was troubled. Age 15 is a dangerous age. It would be the same age as the shooter in the mass murder 4 years later. The student died at her own hand. This time, the police did not rule out bullying. They did cite mental health issues, saying they didn't know of any bullying. Just because they didn't know doesn't mean there wasn't any. We'll see about that in a moment. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click notifications and watch all the videos in this playlist, including the shadow band. Did Oxford schools have a bullying problem? Probably. Bullying and revenge are motives in more than 70% of targeted school violence. The authorities have said no bullying. The newspaper and parents said yes. How about the students? 1 year after those 2 unfortunate kids would have graduated, their school made national news. Here's what they said on ABC's Nightline.
I would have very, very degrading texts sent to me calling me worthless, that I'd be better off dead.
There was this one girl that was really mean to me. She said really mean things. Why don't you just go kill yourself?
Ever since I was little, I can remember getting teased and picked on for how I look.
Like, am I actually gonna come to school today? Am I gonna go through this again?
For the last 4 years is what they said. And as for their schoolmate, who should have graduated the year prior, remember that there was no known bullying, but this was reported on ABC.
It was her older sister, Megan, who took her own life as an Oxford freshman, the victim of cyberbullying.
Megan said, "Everyone wonders why I want to die so bad. It's because I get bullied all the time, and I feel unwanted."
Just 4 years later, we had the tragic mass murder at Oxford, followed by obstruction, investigation, and blame. There's been surprisingly little attention, however, to bullying at Oxford High. The available information is limited and murky. Governor Gretchen Whitmer imposed harsh lockdowns during COVID. Post-lockdown, she failed to order bullying assessment surveys the year the crime took place. The survey for 2023 was reported as better than 2018. Missing was any comparison with the year the attack took place, or a ranking within the state or some other metric. Where is that information? The school employee who initiated the newspaper article back in 2012 was a new employee back then, hired to manage the middle school bullying program. Promoted 5 years later to Dean of Students at Oxford High, she facilitated the school bullying program featured on ABC Nightline, which she originally concealed from the parents. She retained her title as Dean and her role as bully preventer right through the time of the attack. Yet attempts to hold her accountable in her anti-bullying role were deflected, saying she never met with the perpetrator even though he had attempted suicide. The two employees of the school who were blamed were the administrators responsible for training the counselors who failed to stop the attack. We are blaming two people with an indirect administrative role for implementing procedures to detect the crime in progress. And we ignore the role of the individual with the actual title, bully prevention, whose job it was to prevent the crime in the first place. Stopping crime already in progress is not the school's responsibility or their fort. The school's job is knowing their students, developing them, and keeping all of them from harm, potential criminal and victim alike. That's where they should concentrate, and so should the investigation. It's just common sense. No one can prevent every crime attempt, let alone a school. But you can affect a student's mental health and change his life forever. Wouldn't that be better? What's happening at Oxford schools is a government cover-up. Anytime you want to know why a crime is happening, just look at who benefits. No one in the government who could have truly prevented the tragedy will ever be punished. They cover for each other, escape prosecution, and make out in the end. To see just how much they benefit, keep on following the 10th Man.